This is the latest ridiculous crap that's coming from Trump supporters. Apparently racism against white conservative Christians, racism against them from the left, is pushing America towards civil war. And although I do believe it's completely ridiculous what he's saying, but I do nonetheless still feel concerned, because I've noticed on my Twitter recently, I've seen a couple of posts from Trump supporters talking about civil war if Trump gets impeached, threatening civil war basically. And it really disgusts me, the idea that people would rather put their own countrymen, their own countrymen's children at risk through a civil war on behalf of protecting their President Trump, who, you know, if he gets impeached it's because he's suspected of being guilty of a crime. So basically, a lawfully suspected criminal president, they are prepared to put the whole country at risk of civil war. Which isn't surprising, because that right-wing consciousness, that's what the last civil war was against, wasn't it? That same consciousness that wanted to keep slaves. Alright, I know it wasn't entirely about slavery, but that was a very big part of what actually sparked it to the point of civil war. Because, you know, they did want a divide so that certain states could continue to have slavery. Now, it seems that if there is a civil war, they're going to be blaming it on racism from the left. So apparently this guy, as a white conservative Christian, he's getting a little taster of what the descendants of the African American slaves had to suffer for centuries and decades. And it didn't take a civil war. It took a civil war to end slavery, but it didn't take a civil war for them to actually get their full rights once slavery was abolished, because they were still suffering racism from the right for decades. And there was a battle, a social campaign that was comprised of both black and white people, demanding that apartheid ends, that racism ends. You see, it wasn't a black and white battle, was it? It wasn't black people demanding that racism ends and white people saying no, it isn't going to end. It was a mixture of black and white people, human beings. Because at the end of the day, what is the far right? It's inhuman. It's inhumane. It is inhumane to keep a slave. Surely a Christian would understand that. And it is inhumane to elect a president who has confessed, is on public record, confessing, bragging, not express any remorse, but bragging about how he tried to fuck, quote, a friend who was married, the wife of a couple who he was friends with. She obviously had to fight him off, because he said he came onto her, quote, really, very heavily. But she was married. She wouldn't have it, she were married. Quote, I came onto her like a bitch. But she was married, he kept saying. So is that what white conservative Christians do? Any chance they get, they start coming on very heavily, like a bitch, trying to fuck the wives of their friends. Is that a Christian thing? Is it a white conservative Christian thing? Now it's talking about Jesse Benn from Huffington Post contributor, because he said he's calling for violent resistance to. He says for violent resistance to work, it needs to be organised. Individual acts can be understandable, but likely counterproductive, ineffective. So he's speaking out against individual acts of violence, but he's talking about the violent resistance to work. You know, so he's talking about organised resistance. So why would people start talking about organised resistance? Well, you should know, because being a patriot, then you understand that the Constitution has given you the right to bear arms. Why? For the purposes of moving a tyrannical government, corrupt powers. That's why you've got your right to bear arms. So you can remove any tyrants from power. And Donald Trump is a tyrant because he's inhumane, you see. That is what the original Civil War was about. Like I say, it was about the humans standing up against the inhumane. It was between humans that believe all humans should have full human rights and the people who believe that no, only some people should have human rights. The majority should be treated like animals. And if they're black, then they should be a slave. They've got no rights. They're not a full human being. So it was a pack of lies. Because at least on the so-called left, it is a fact that black people are equally as human as white people. And they're equally capable of being inhumane as white people as well. Because people are people. There are good people, there are bad people. There are people that are law-abiding, respectful, kind, compassionate and dignified. And there are people who are just the complete opposite. And Trump is one of the complete opposite. That's why he can get on stage and promise all his supporters that, oh, I'm going to give you much better health care than Obama, the Affordable Care Act. We're going to get rid of that. You can have much better care. Much better health care plan, he says. Well, he hasn't lied, because you need to understand who he's actually talking to when he said, I'm going to deliver a much better health care plan. Much better. Much better for everybody. For the people. Because you see, in Trump's world, the only people that he recognises as people are the corporate people. Okay? The rich corporate people. All the rest of American citizens who don't fall into that category, you're not a full human being. You're stock. You don't count as people. So he has delivered a much better healthcare plan for the corporations, hasn't he? Yes, he has. But he's not delivered a better healthcare plan for the American public. Millions are going to be left with no healthcare. So that's basically a death sentence. And even he's cutting Medicare and welfare. And the people are being told that no, actually welfare is a form of theft of rich people. Is it really? Well, what about the rich people that closed down all American businesses, factories and industries and took them all over to China so they wouldn't have to pay the workforce a living wage and taxes in America to keep America great? Because you know, to keep a country great, it needs infrastructure, it needs industry, it needs jobs, it needs people earning a living wage and people who have access to healthcare. That's what makes America great, is its constitution. So obviously Jesse Benn feels like his country is not honouring the constitution anymore. And actually he's absolutely right. And it is disturbing as well that people like you, Trump supporters, are picking up on something like this that he said. Okay? And don't forget that this is a response to a president who has outright said that if there's a terrorist, you shouldn't just kill the terrorist, you should kill their families as well. And that is a direct reflection of what was coming from the Israeli government when they were bombing Gaza in 2014, and they were saying that, yes, kill the families, even the children, because the snakes, breeding snakes, which obviously kill the families, does include the children as well, doesn't it? He said, I'm going to drain the swamp. Well, obviously, he wasn't talking about the swamp that Alex Jones was referring to. All the rich bankers that have robbed America through fraud and theft and money laundering and even murder and war crimes. No, he was talking about the swamp at the bottom. Just kill them all off. Just leave them homeless, leave them with no health care, just leave them with nothing. Police can shoot them if they want, no one's going to say anything. That's the swamp he's talking about. Because the swamp that most of his voters thought he was talking about are actually the swamp that is now running the White House. So that's quite a serious matter. When you've got the kind of people running the White House who blatantly mislead and deceive and lie to the public. You know, there's still all this stuff about Trump and the 13-year-old and the two other witnesses that support that girl's statement. Oh, she's suddenly withdrawn it. Why isn't he suing her for making false statements on sworn affidavits against him? Why aren't he sued her? Yeah, and there's still a lot of people think, oh, he's going to investigate Pizzagate. Of course he isn't going to investigate Pizzagate. But, you know, as I say, this is a response to a president that says that we shouldn't just kill the terrorists, we should go and kill their families as well. So on 9/11, Osama bin Laden's family was being flown out of the States. When nobody else was allowed to fly, they were allowed to fly out. He was over there not long ago, probably shook hands with members of Osama bin Laden's family, who apparently, according to him, should have all been killed. This kind of rhetoric that has been coming out, that were coming out in the Trump campaign, that is the kind of rhetoric that pushes people to civil war. When protesters at a Trump rally are being physically assaulted and a guy actually turns to the news camera, the TV news camera, and said, maybe next time we'll kill him. And Trump's offering to pay people's legal fees if they get involved with brawls with anti-Trumpists. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a Hillary supporter. And, you know, Dave Hodges, you might think I'm making this video against you. But no, it's for your benefit just as much as anybody else. Now, either you're just an absolute shill or a profiteer that wants to feed off Trump's popularity, or his core supporters who are all sticking together and supporting each other like crazy, anybody who supports Trump, because it's a rapidly dwindling group. You know, because I've scrolled down and I see Oh yeah, as usual, you're flogging something. I mean, it might not be a bad thing, but who knows? But you do need to wake up. Because being a Christian, you see, it's fine being a white conservative Christian. But if being a conservative means abandoning your humanity, then you can't be a Christian. Because Christianity is all about respecting the human being. That's what Jesus taught us, how to be a human being, how to live like God intended us to live. As human beings, brother and sister, giving and caring and sharing. But no, not in Trump's America. You know, this is the kind of crap that we get. Majority of immigrant households are on welfare. 51% of immigrant-headed households use at least one welfare programme, as opposed to 30% for households headed by the native-born. Okay. But it's only illegals. No, actually 3/4 of immigrant households using welfare are headed by a legal immigrant. But immigrants are hard workers. No doubt, but welfare and work are not mutually exclusive. Really, why not then? Why? Why is it that people are working and still having to depend on welfare then, you see? Why aren't you asking that question, Mark Krikorian? No. Who is on welfare? You see, again, this is explosive, nasty, horrible stuff that's picking on the weakest, poorest, weakest people of society who've got the least power. Picking on them in order to defend President Trump. So they want a civil war to defend President Trump. Well, really, America should have had a civil war. Not a civil war. America should have picked up its arms and rose up against the tyrannical government after 9/11. As soon as people started to realise the truth, that the official take on the whole thing is actually a wild conspiracy theory that absolutely falls apart the minute you start looking at the facts and evidence, and that the facts and evidence do point very, very strongly, according to lawful suspicion, to an inside job that was orchestrated by multiple interested parties, which do include Zionist corporations, the Saudi, Mossad, CIA, MI5, who blooming knows? We know they've all been involved in funding and training terrorists. Welfare is when $2 trillion can go missing from your defence budget. Welfare is giving bankers trillions of dollars in bailouts as a reward for committing very serious crimes that have left people destitute, and even our lawful suspicions that they were involved in planning and orchestrating and funding 9/11. That very conveniently not only destroyed all the evidence related to their fraudulent and illegal banking practices that were held in the Twin Towers, but also all the evidence the CIA had gathered that was in their offices in Building 7. But apparently we can ignore the laws of physics in order to support the rhetoric of tyrants. No, I'm sorry, if it comes to that, you see, the Constitution was not written but in order to support an ignorant public. And you weren't given arms so you could start civil war against fellow Americans when you're being governed by a tyrannical power. So if there is a civil war, it'll be humans forced to defend themselves, forced to defend their constitution from inhumans who do not want to honour the constitution, who do not want to remove tyrants from power, who are quite happy to vote for a known sex offender and who is very strongly suspected of paedophilia as well. Because I'm not buying it that this girl's just dropped a case. What, just as Trump gets elected, just as he's being elected president, he's got millions of people, millions of people supporting him who are quite happy to kill, apparently. They're quite happy, they're happy to kill anybody who even just speaks out against Trump. They're happy to kill the families of anybody who's branded terrorist. Their president himself has bragged that on national TV that he could go out in the street and shoot somebody and he still wouldn't lose any popularity. So is that what being a white conservative Christian means? You're feeling that you're suffering racism when that is what you're supporting. That's got nothing to do with racism, mate. It's got everything to do with the fact that you are actually anti-Christian. So either you believe this because you've been brainwashed, or you are anti-Christian. You absolutely know what you're doing. You're the kind of person who'd quite happily, if you could, have the freedom to just go and shoot every immigrant. And this is from a people who are themselves immigrants and committed genocide against the natives. And you're talking about native rights. You know, talking about natives who get welfare. What natives? You see, now it is time. You know, victimised. Jesse Benz should also be in jail. He should be in jail, really, should he? Well, where should President Trump be then, for what he said? Where should he be for all the things that he said that he's done and done? For denying healthcare to millions of people, basically writing a death sentence to innocent people who've done nothing wrong except they've got ill. These are very, very, very serious things, and if you find yourself receiving negativity, then that's because what Trump and all his supporters, and you obviously support, is negative. It's in total denial of the facts. It's a twisted, cockeyed ideology that you're all spouting and promoting. And is this some kind of threat now, this civil war? Oh, we're going to have civil war. If we don't get what we want, we're going to have civil war, really? No. The people are going to rise up and remove tyrants from power. Every election since 9/11 has been null and void because every single one has been organised under the jurisdiction of a government and a banking industry and corporate enterprises that are all lawfully suspected as being complicit in internal tyranny, an act of terrorism on 9/11. And Larry Silverstein, who became a billionaire on the proceeds of all the deaths and horror of 9/11. He is implicated as well. He is a lawful suspect. Great guy, best friend of President Trump apparently. No. This is a serious, serious matter. And when you look at how America's been robbed, forced to fund all these illegal wars, and borrow huge sums and lose how many soldiers dead, maimed, permanently, physically, psychologically and emotionally scarred. It is very, very, very serious. And, you know, for your own sake, and as I've said before, there's a lot to be gained from eating humble pie. We all need now to eat some humble pie and get strong, because from our humility we get strong. From our humility we find righteousness, respect, dignity, compassion, consideration. And people like you, Dave Hodges, need to show some humility to the truth. Because you cannot talk about racism against yourself. I know that they implemented positive discrimination as a means of increasing racial tensions, because that's what they do. They've always been tyrants since the killing of JFK. But actually, 9/11 was the epitome of what they could do, of what they could get away with, and they cannot be allowed to get away with it. And any nation that allows their government to get away with blatantly murdering its citizens in order to create illegal wars and rob the public and bail out criminal banks, who then turn around and tell the public that they're thieves because they're dependent on welfare, because they've been robbed of all the jobs by the corporations that would rather go to China and exploit Chinese people. But yeah, slavery, that's what they support. That's why there was the Civil War, wasn't it? Well, it doesn't matter now, does it? Because they don't need slaves in America, do they? They can go abroad. They can go to China for the slaves, can't they? And now coming back to the country that they've robbed, left the people destitute, jobless, the economy in tatters. Oh, now they're coming back to tell the people that they're thieves because they're dependent on welfare. That the people that they've most got to fear are immigrants. This is from a nation that is established on immigrants. The stronger the workforce, the richer the country should be. Oh, but oh no, no. People aren't allowed to have their own businesses, really, are they? To make their own money. No, it's all got to be controlled by a handful of bankers who've taken over countless American businesses and just broken them apart. Left people homeless, jobless, hopeless. And so this kind of rhetoric about people talking about getting organised, you know, on both sides it is very, very disturbing. But really, you would be better as a human being, instead of feeling that you're suffering from racist attacks, understand that it's not racism you're suffering from. It's the fact that you're not standing by your humanity. And if you're not standing by your humanity, if actually you support the inhumane, then you're a wolf. You're part of the wolf pack consciousness, the Roman wolf pack consciousness. That is what you're supporting. So if you're not a human being, if you can't support humanity, then you are a wolf. And you do need to be, all the wolves need to be penned in somewhere, don't they? Because they're a danger, they're a risk. Because they just want to eat people. They don't want to cooperate and work together and show each other mutual respect. No, no, the wolves, the dogs, they want to live like in a dog pack under their alpha male. And his bitches. And that is what America is now being blatantly governed by. A wolf pack and its bitches. Its top bitches. And when people are faced with a government like that, then yeah, people are going to start talking about getting organised. And when they're dealing with the kind of people that are threatening civil war, if Trump gets impeached, oh, we don't care. We'll witness thousands of American children left at risk in order to protect Trump from having to account for his crimes that we lawfully suspect that he's committed or participated in. You know, for your own sake, you need to understand what being a Christian is. And whiteness has got nothing at all to do with it. Because being a human being has got nothing to do with race. Being a human being is not being politically correct. Okay? Having compassion and care for people is not being politically correct. It's Trump, actually, who's politically correct. He's politically correct when he says he's going to deliver a better health care to the people, to his people. Yeah, the people, the corporate people. Politically correct statement. Because the American people, the physical people, the workforce, they're not recognised as people. They're stock, corporate government, corporate banks. Now when it's come to the point that they've done 9/11 and killed thousands of people and millions of people and put Americans at risk and brought ruin to the whole world and protected criminal bankers who've robbed American citizens or the global citizens of everything, pensions, jobs, homes, you name it. And now they want to even take the welfare away. Well, like I say, you're not going to have a constitution soon, because that's what tyrants do. And since 9/11, they've lost no time in putting the constitution through the shredder. You've still only just clinging on to your right to bear arms. And that's being cut right down, isn't it? And to the degree that the most people who, the majority of people who are most likely to be able to legitimately buy weapons in America are white conservative Christians, aren't they? So you want to talk about racism again? And as I say, if it comes to civil war, it will be a war between the humane and the inhumane. It's not going to be a racist war. It's not going to be blacks against whites, natives against immigrants. It will be humans standing up for their rights and defending themselves from the constant attack from people who are claiming that only the rich should have rights. Only the rich people should have health care. And that they have no responsibilities at all to the society that has provided them with everything they have, their wealth, their rights, everything. So it's very, very, you know, as I say, that's why I've made this video, because I do feel that there is a threat actually of civil war, but it isn't coming from by racism from the left. It is actually coming from the fact that the ruling powers and their media, that, you know, their disgusting media, are tyrants. They are tyrants. They did cover up, they did participate in, organise, fund, whatever, and cover up 9/11. Whether or not the people involved with the cover up were also the people involved directly with the plot and actually carrying it out, But anybody who stays silent now is complicit, because the evidence is in. There's no denying it. There is no denying the laws of physics. There is no denying the fact that it's very likely that the 3 witnesses that have spoken, written sworn affidavits against Donald Trump as a paedophile, and have subsequently withdrawn those statements as soon as he's become president, then that is suspicious when you're dealing with a guy who's a multi-billionaire and president of the United States and 3 impoverished abuse victims. The power imbalance there is huge. And then you've got a whole network of his supporters who threaten to kill people who stand against Trump. And you know, she even said that she was scared. The main witness, the victim survivor, had received death threats. So we can't just ignore this as if, oh no, she was just making it up. Sorry, no, you can't get away with that. Not when it comes to serious stuff like this, and the guy is president. And he's already confessed to pussy grabbing and sexually attacking a friend's wife. So it is, it's something that everybody needs to think about. And all this rhetoric, as I say, I've just screwed it all up and explained to you, look, sorry, this is trash thinking. You need to throw out the trash and get with the truth. Get with Jesus.